Scene one, Apple, take one.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Film Notes. My name is Shane Borza. I'm an award-winning filmmaker, and this is the show where I talk to people in the industry about what they do in the industry and try to get some of their film notes. I was just talking to the guys here. I was excited. This is my first twofer. I've never had a dual interview before, so this is really cool. And so we have two friends that I have a connection with through, unfortunately, the now defunct AOF Film Festival from like back in the day. And so we have Stephen Foster, who is both an actor and writer. And then we have Chuck Pelletier, who is a writer-director. So a couple different things we're going to be talking about, which is a little bit about each of them, some of the work they've done together, and some of what they do in those different roles. So gentlemen, welcome to the call. And if you want to both introduce yourselves, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Stephen Foster, and I am an actor and a writer, and I teach the workshop Awakening the Actor Within.
And hello, my name is Chuck Pelletier. I am a writer and a director. I directed 2 films with Stephen in them that I wrote, and that's what we had offered at AOF when we met you, Shane. But Stephen and I have written a lot of scripts together, so we're a writing team as well. So that's basically what I do. As a day job, I work as a music director for Princess Cruises.
And I'm glad that you talked about the writing that you're doing together in the projects, because I want to talk a little bit about, each of you first, but also, you're here obviously is like a pairing, and we could talk about maybe how that happened. But to start with, I usually ask people, because as you know, there's no like one way in the industry. So how people get started in what they're doing is always interesting to me. And I think it's also helpful for people to see like, oh, there's a lot of different ways to get started in having a creative life or some kind of a career, especially for different roles. So how did you both get into the filmmaking industry? Is it a lifelong thing? Did you start like when you were young? Did you come into it from a side, like something else? So if you could each talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think our answer is going to be the same. We both came into it through theater. The day I met Stephen, and I probably should mention that we're screenwriting partners and we're also life partners. So but the day I met him, he said, I am starting a theater company. So he was the artistic director of a theater company. And my response was, wow, theater is my life. And neither one of us had ever done film. Stephen had written a couple screenplays, he can speak to that, but I hadn't. And my life was, I'd written a couple musicals for the stage. He had written a couple plays for the stage. I was currently acting on stage in something. So our lives were very much theater. And this was right about the time that filmmaking went from being something that was only allowed to the elite back in the days of film, and moving over to a vehicle that could be driven by darn near everyone, as long as you have an iPhone. So we started to acquire pretty quickly some filmmaking materials, and we got into filmmaking that way. I don't know if Stephen wants to add to that.
I will say we did work in theater, and we did have a theater company, and we were involved. I wrote plays and Chuck wrote plays. We wrote a musical called The Green Room, which we actually wrote together with our friend Rod. And so a lot of our backstory was doing theater. And I, as an actor, did a lot of commercials and a lot of, I guess, indie films. And the big turning point for me was actually when I got cast as the lead in a movie. And that movie is called Off Hollywood. And ironically, that was the name of the theater company that I had run. So it was sort of like kismet that I actually got into film and learned a lot about film by being the lead in a movie. Because I'd only been like a bit part in a movie, and so it's by learning that. And as Chuck said, the times had shifted to where you didn't need 35 millimeter film to make a movie. You could actually make it with digital cameras. And as that transition started to happen, and as I learned more about being in film, we became independent filmmakers. And so, because as an actor, I wasn't satisfied with what I was being auditioned for. I didn't like the roles, and they were never satisfying for me. I wanted something that was more like the thing that I'd been cast in the lead, something that was meaty, something that I had possession over as an artist. And so with meeting Chuck and us doing our films, he started to write scripts that had me in them. I guess I was lucky. Call it casting couch. But that's how we started to make film. And as we've learned more, our first film was called That's Opportunity Knocking, which Chuck wrote and directed. And that short, what ended up happening is I was working at a crappy day job, and someone came in and said, I'm going to enter my film into film festivals. And I got a little ding that said, oh, why don't you take that short and enter it into film festivals? And we started entering That's Opportunity Knocking into film festivals. And miraculously, we started to win awards. And that was sort of a great bell for me to go, this is the right path. Because when I was just an actor and a writer, I wasn't really getting the recognition that I felt that I hate to say this, deserved or wanted. And through film festivals, I started to get that, I would say, gratification or satisfaction. I'm not saying it wasn't hard work and we just got lucky. I thought the film was really good and deserving of those awards. So that was a big turning point for me. So it was through film festivals that I really started to understand filmmaking, and that passion really hit for me.
I had a lot come up listening to both of you, and the first thing was, unfortunately, a lot of people, they do have to kind of create their own vehicle for themselves, because especially at first, we have to kind of have something to like showcase, like, here's the thing I made to show you what I can do, and then usually it's not till people see getting your work out there and touring around and making sure people are seeing it. They're like, oh, you're good. We should put you in something. It is really hard to show up and say, like, I know I can do it. I've got the talent. People have told me. But if there isn't that thing for people to see where they can go, oh, yeah, like I'm watching you do the thing. I can believe it. I can see it. Then unfortunately, there's a disconnect. But it also goes that, if you have a team or partnership, you use those people, everybody kind of does that. So if they already know someone and they don't know you, it's hard to get in there, but it makes it much more viable when you do something. You also learn so much about doing that. So I'm so glad that you had that like ding go off, and that's how some of things like this happen, where we go like, oh, a couple of years ago, we met at a festival, and then you start to go, oh, right, I remember that. How are you? It's kind of like when you work on a set and then you feel like family and you don't see each other for years, and that is sometimes interesting things I've heard people talk about. It's like the summer camp, it's like you have this really intense feeling, you don't see each other for like a year, and then you come back and you kind of feel like it's the next day. So, but I had forgotten that you were both production partners and life partners. So that was an interesting thing. Like, oh, yes. But the thing I wanted to ask as a follow-up for you both, and I've talked to two people who were actors and have done like various things. One, she's a dancer and singer actor, so she's doing a lot of different kinds of performance. And the other one is just a strict actor, but he does both like stage and screen. about what the difference is between those different kinds of performance. But I wanted to ask your take on writing for, because you mentioned plays and a musical. And is it different in the writing to think this is a live performance on a stage versus this is like a film production? I've never spoken to anybody on the writing side about that difference, because similarly, you know, when you're acting, but there is a difference between being on a set where you're doing multiple takes and you're stopping and starting, and being on a live production where it's kind of like just rolling continuously without stopping. So I'm curious what the writer's side of that might be, if either one of you want to jump on that.
The writer's side of stage versus screen is, on stage, it's a continual production. Once you start at 8 o'clock, you don't stop until 10 o'clock. On film, you film that from the in segments in different pieces and different days, and sometimes different years. And so the writing of it is, you have to tell a story that can, on stage, you have to be able to tell a story that takes place within 2 hours, a 2-hour span. And you can, and it all takes place in front of an audience. And so the writing of that is, you're very aware that that audience is there. Whereas film, you can film it from my kitchen here to Yosemite. You know, it can be cut and edited. You can edit things out. You can edit entire scenes out, entire characters out. And when you write something for film, I'm very cognizant of locations, characters, and what can actually be accomplished with the budget that I think it can be filmed in. So I hope that answers your question. That's the big difference to me.
Yeah, I just to expand on that. The biggest thing that I've noticed is the length of the scenes. In cinema, you don't want to go very long with a scene. As Stephen said, you've got to be conscious of, Stephen said this, he said, you want to be conscious of locations. In cinema, you can have, we were just writing a screenplay this morning, actually, and we had one little scene that was 3 lines. And I said to Stephen, is that enough? And he said, absolutely. Well, you would never say that on stage. And I say never. I mean, you know, there are musicals where you go in front of the curtain and there's 3 lines to give the people time to change the set and back. I mean, there are exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, you can take your time with scenes and plays. And it seems very pedantic when you're watching a play, even like Streetcar Named Desire or The Importance of Being Earnest or whatever, and you're watching a film version of it and you're like, wow, these scenes are long. That's because play scenes, they really dig in and they let scenes go on forever. Or if you do that in a film, you better be making a choice. You're doing a Quentin Tarantino choice, or, you know, whoever, to make long scenes. And you also have to remember that things can be a little more intimate in film, and you can do a lot more with a look. So when you're writing for the screen, you don't need as much dialogue, because you can simply write in there. Somebody sitting at the desk, somebody walks in, there can be 1 line, but he's picking up an item and handing it to the other person. We see the item, we're seeing, you know, so much can be covered visually that can't be covered on stage, because you're not going to pick up those details. That's what I would say.
It's funny, I was just watching this week, and this is an old clip, but Stallone was talking about how when he initially saw First Blood, he was like, oh, this is terrible. And he said that because they had adopted it from a book. So of course, that's another, you know, it's, you could put so much words in and have people thinking and talking and doing all this stuff. And that was a similar point. He's like, just cut all my dialogue out. He's like, this character is like someone you need to watch them. You don't need to hear them. And he's like, he's physical, but like he says, he's like, you could do everything with a look. He doesn't need to talk. And he said by cutting out all the dialogue, they cut out all this like dead time where everyone's just standing around like talking to each other. He's like, this is an action movie. It has to move fast. And so I was like, oh, I would love to, I don't even know if it's available, but I would love to see like what that long version with all of the dialogue might be. But you're right. It's like, oh, there needs to be some pacing. Like, let's get this moving. We can just do a close up of like Stallone being angry and as John Rambo or whatever. We don't need to hear him tell us how he's feeling. We can just see it. So it is really funny that I just saw that a couple days ago and you're referencing this because it immediately connected that. And I think it's very good observation. But a lot of people talk about, you know, you're communicating to the back of the theater. But when you're in the camera, you know, you can be here, or, you know, the spaghetti westerns, you're here. You know, it's so close and like you mentioned, very intimate. So I think that's very interesting for people to translate, because when I started the show 4 years ago, I was talking to like especially that first season was like, well, who do I know personally? Like film friends. But now it's been a little more of like talking to people who just do production. And it doesn't matter if it's a live theater show or it's a dancing recital or it's music, it's all production. It just matters on, and especially, you know, theaters, you know, there's lighting, there's music. It's all the similar departments. It's just different ways of interacting with that performance to, you know, the movie, people are watching it at some point. The theater, people are watching it, they're just doing it live, but you still have an audience like watching what you're making. And I think it's really fascinating to hear the similarities and differences between some of the crafts and especially even just different departments. I did want to shift a little bit because you both talked about being writers, and Stephen, you're a writer actor, and Chuck, you're more writer director. Some people start in something and then they move to something else, or they kind of hybridize over time. So I wanted to see, did you start with one of those things and then add in the other? Did it feel like a natural evolution? Like I know, Stephen, you talked about like writing your own things, and maybe that would have been more in service of you acting. So I don't know if you were thinking of it like, oh, I want to write and separately I want to act, or they were converging. But in the same for Chuck, where you're like, oh, I want to be a writer director who only directs the things I write, or were those separate things? I don't know if you're writing for other people or directing for other people, but I love hearing how those different kind of lenses or channels either overlap or separate out for different people too. So if you could each speak on that a little bit.
I'll be short on that one. I actually come from a music background, and I started in musicals. And actually, I think all of my theater, no, not all of it, but most of my theater experience as an actor has been in musicals. I was in a professional play called Noises Off, and I've been in many plays, but in terms of being paid for acting on stage, it's mostly been in musicals. It's much easier to get jobs as a paid actor if you're in a musical. So that's just always what I've done. And I'm a singer-songwriter too. And so I kind of come at it from that angle, which is a whole nother thing, because when you're writing a song, you're writing a story. When you're writing a screenplay, you're writing a bigger story. But in terms of acting, I just decided that I liked writing a lot more than acting. I don't have the love for acting that Stephen has, which I'll transition over to him. He loves acting so much, he wrote a book on it. he wrote it. I'll let him tell you about his book.
Well, I did write a book, plug, called Awakening the Actor Within, and it's sort of like the artist's way for actors. It's a sort of self-help book for actors to find their passion and hone their craft through the practice of acting and through writing. And what happened for me is I really wanted to be an actor, and I studied to be an actor in college, but I couldn't get cast in anything. And so being the way I am, petulant, I said, well, I will write my own plays then. And so I started to write because I had read a lot of plays through my research being an actor, and I'd read a lot. And I said, well, I will just write a play. And I was very like 20 years old and snotty. Like, I will write my own play and I'll put my friends in them. And so I did. I wrote a play, and I did write it for my friends, and it was never produced. And I sort of fell into writing because I couldn't get cast. And I was kind of mad that I wasn't, because I was like, well, there's no role for me in Streetcar Named Desire. You know, a lot of the things that they were casting in college, I couldn't be cast in. And really, I was like, well, what about things that are for me? And I also, in college, I wasn't told that I was funny. No one said, you're 5 feet tall, you have a high voice. Boy, you need to be the younger Leslie Jordan. You need to capitalize on that. And it was years later that I finally realized that being short and having this weird voice was actually an asset. But when I was studying acting, I didn't know. So I started writing plays. And I wrote plays for myself. And eventually those started to be produced. And then I started to somehow, as everyone in Hollywood does, slip into screenwriting. And I found this book called, or Chuck found a book called How to Write a Movie in 21 Days by Vicki King, which actually started Chuck and I on the road to writing screenplays. So for me, it was always being an actor writer, sort of like Woody Allen and Christopher Guest. I wanted to write stuff that was material and character driven for me, to where I could play different characters or characters that I really wanted to play. So it was sort of for me, writing was a kind of a power move for my acting, to go, well, if they don't ever cast me in anything, I can always write something for myself. So it was sort of a power tool and a power move for me. And then when I got cast in that lead in that movie that I was talking about, Chuck said, well, you've been a writer. Why don't I write something for you? And he wrote a part for me in That's Opportunity Knocking. He wrote a part for me in Driverless, where I played 3 roles. And so writing for me and acting now are hand in hand. But it started as a very rebellious sort of Revolutionary War kind of FU to my college.
I'm going to be 50 here in a couple months. So I have seen things change in terms of representation and opportunities. You know, it's much wider now. It used to be kind of had to be like, well, here's, you know, what leading people look like or act like or whatever. And if you're not that, you're your background or whatever. So that has very much changed, but it does also give people that pressure to, like you said, like, oh, I'll show you. And so it can really hone like these diamonds where people go, well, I didn't have the opportunity, so I made the opportunity. And then that can lead to other opportunity, you know, spillover. So I'm really, I also love, like, I joke with my wife, like, oh, I have a lot of FU in me, you know, so people are like, you can't do that. I'm like, oh, really? You know, so I love when I have those like kindred spirits. So I salute you. I wanted to get back a little bit though, to, because you were talking about like developing your own stuff and getting it out to film festivals. So like, how long ago are we talking? Was that like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, longer than that? Like, how did you get from those first couple things to where you are at now? And like, what was maybe the development over those years? Because some people, as you know, I mean, you mentioned Tarantino earlier, you know, put a movie out every 5 or 10 years. And then other people, they're putting movies out all the time. So are you finding that you know, over the years, you were making bigger things or making things faster or more often? You know, talk to me a little bit about maybe the evolution of things over time.
Steven got cast in a movie called Hidden Hills, and the movie got placed in the Palm Springs Film Festival. And he told me that, and I said, what's a film festival? I mean, I knew there was something called Sundance. So we went. And we had the best time of our lives. And Stephen was walking into bars that were around the film festival, and people were going, "Hey, you're the short guy in that film." We were in love. We ended up, I think Stephen told a little bit of the story of That's Opportunity Knocking, which was and ended up being a film that we had made that he was inspired to start submitting to film festivals. And shout out to Fernando Mico, who was very involved in Dell, and AOF. Dell was his mentor, and he sort of started a spin-off of AOF, Nova Film Festival, which we were just at. That's the film festival, the North Virginia Film Festival that we were just at this last week in Washington, D.C. Anyway, Fernando was the first person to put That's Opportunity Knocking into a film festival, and we came in second in that film festival, and the film in best short comedy, and the #1 film was, it must have been a $500,000 budget. I mean, it was a great film. It was a good script. I'm the first one to say, if something's good and it deserves to beat us. They'd spent $500,000 on this thing. It was a French-Italian film. It was amazing. And there it was, this great film. And here we were, second place to that. We're like, wow, we're in the club. So that's kind of where it started off. You catch a bug, I think, with film festivals. You sort of go, hey, I like this. I like hanging out with other people and talking to them about how they didn't shoot that film. They shot this one instead because it's cheaper, and I got this national park for free, and blah, blah, blah. All those conversations are fun, and you catch that little film festival bug. So then we were going to shoot a feature film, and I told Stephen, since I wrote and directed That's Opportunity Knocking, I said, I need to write and direct one more short film. And so we wrote and I directed the film Driverless, which was 28 minutes. That's Opportunity Knocking was 22 minutes. And once I had finished shooting and editing Driverless, I had a cinematographer, I had an editor, I had different people doing everything, so that I could just kind of feel what it is to be a writer-director. Once that was done, I felt like, okay, now I feel like I've done 2 short films. I'm ready to do a feature film, which is why Stephen and I now are only writing features. So we're into the feature realm.
Sorry to stop the show, but we've got some bills to pay around here, and to do that, I wanted to point out a couple things I've got on offer at ShaneBorza.com. As both a master-level mental health coach and an award-winning filmmaker, I have the experience and expertise to help you go further faster, regardless of whether that is in your production or life. I am psyched to announce all my courses and books have been updated and expanded and are available on both Apple Books and at my shop. Especially wanted to point out my film notes book and workbook, where you can learn everything you need to make your film and get it out to the world. If you need help with either your life or film, please reach out. And now, back to the show. That's a great progression. I encourage people to pay attention to that. Like, make some shorts, start even with a short or a small one, low, no budget, but challenging yourself. Like, when you get into that 20-30 minute range, or you have more of a budget, or you have departments, even if it's one person, be like, oh, I have an editor, I have a camera person, I have a sound person. Like, all of a sudden now there's like 10, 20 people on set instead of, 2 or 5 or whatever. It really does give you that sense of like, oh, I can see like a feature for myself, because it can be so daunting. So it's great to hear that not only your film did so well, and I saw Driverless, which was excellent, by the way, but not only that, but you were able to see like, okay, we're now ready. Like you said earlier, like, we're in the club, like we can go from here. Because I think a lot of people, unfortunately, and sometimes this is just because they don't have the connections to their, they don't know somebody that has the camera, or they don't know somebody that has the friend that works at the national park that they can get for free or whatever. So they end up saying like, oh, I made like 20 short films, and they never end up kind of getting up into that next level. So I'm so thrilled to have you have that happen, but that you're evolving as you go through this. And it sounds like on both sides, like on the writing side, you're now writing features, but on the production side, you're also now going to be making a feature. Is that correct for the next step?
That's absolutely correct. As I said, we wrote screenplays for many years, and as writers, we were trying to be Hollywood writers. Like Ruth Gordon and Garson Kanin. You're too young to know who they are, but they wrote Adam's Rib, and they wrote things together, comedies for Katharine Hepburn. But we wanted to be that, and that writing path was very frustrating to me because it felt the same way as I was with an actor. I just could not get it done. I couldn't get anything sold, even though we optioned the script at one point. It just seemed like it was a bunch of hurdles and rewrites and classes. It seemed to me like the penny would never drop, or the shoe would never drop, being a screenwriter. And when we entered the film festivals, it, like Chuck said, it sort of opened this world for us. We said, oh my God. And that's where you can, if you didn't go to film school, like I didn't go to film school, that's where you can make the contacts, like you were mentioning, Shane, where you can meet the person with the camera. You can meet the person who has some connections with some locations. And so the evolution for us is now that we have 2 films under our belt, is now to make features. And we've written about 3 features in the past couple of years that we are now going to go out and get financing for, which is a whole other ball of wax that we're like, oh my gosh, how in the heck do you do that? Because Chuck and I come from just a production, being cast and stuff and writing stuff. We don't come from that background of getting the budgets. But with Driverless, we did do all that. We did assemble the crew. We did assemble the cast. So we do have some experience, but now we're looking at it going, well, how do we get the financing, which is, I know, the big quagmire for all independent filmmakers, especially those who don't have big success and big fame. So that's the next goal, is to find out the pieces of how to get financing for our features, because we don't want to do a feature on our credit cards or, financing it ourselves. So that is our evolution, is to get our features that we have and we love, to get them now into budget state and to find financing for it.
And the choice of quagmire I was laughing to myself. I was like, yes, this is exactly what it is. And again, this is another, I think, teachable moment for people listening is, you can go, I started off as an AD, and you're only there for, you're in pre-production a little bit for like maybe a month to get things organized and everything before the shooting starts. But as soon as you wrap, you're out. You don't have anything to do with post. You don't have anything to do with anything that happens before, like financing or getting the teams together. They just hire you and say, okay, 2 weeks from now, we're going to get started. So you have to get the schedule going and the call sheets and all that stuff. Like everything already happened. And so you're kind of only the tail end of pre, and then you're there for production, and that's all you do over and over and over. And you don't learn anything about the 2 other ends of the project. So last year we got our feature El Cap Wedding to get distribution, and our distributor gave us a new term, which I had never heard before, which was post. I was like, what is that? And she's like, well, your film goes through post, and then you put it into delivery, and then you have to do all that post work. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And she's like, you have to do all the stuff to promote your film and get it out there in the trailers and the posters and behind the scenes, and you have to have sizzle reels, and you have to have press releases, and you have to have a regular, like every single week, you have to have a little snippet go out on YouTube, and you have to promote that, and you have to tag it, and you have to do, you need a year of that. I'm like, oh my God, like, so all this work to do, but we made the movie 2 years ago, so even that was this whole new realm of like me asking my other indie filmmakers, and they're like, I don't know what that is. Like, I've never done that. I didn't know you needed to do that. So it is the constant quagmire. You're like, I was just picturing in my head when you were saying that, like, your feet are sinking and you push this one in deeper to pull this one out, but now you have to push this one in to pull that one out, and you just can't make any progress. It's so hard. But I really salute you both in having that evolution of like, I'm not going to let myself get blocked. I'll write stuff for myself. I'll get casting. I'll make stuff. Or even just going to, because I believe you're in California area, so you're traveled to Virginia, like literally all the way across the country. And that, because Stephen mentioned not going to film school, I always really encourage people, you have to find your people. And if you go to a film school and you have, especially if it's like big school, you get out and you have all those like, oh, remember me? Or even if you don't remember, it's like, we both went to the same school. It doesn't matter, even if it was 10 years apart. You're like, okay. But it's really great because if you go to a film festival, I mean, you might meet 500 people and connect with 100 of them on LinkedIn or Facebook, but you might get that one or two really good, and now like they're on your team. And if you go to enough film festivals, you go back every year, you really can build that momentum. And that was something I wanted to ask you about, because for me, I got really in the AOF community for like a good solid 10 years. And then unfortunately that fell apart a couple of years ago. And now I'm in the, so I'll put this on your radar, the Nevada Women's Film Festival. This will be my second year working with them, which are here in Vegas. And it's like, oh, good. They know me and I know them, and I'm here for the whole festival, and I'm here to help set up, and I'm here to do all this stuff. So now I feel like after having a couple of years where I didn't have like a festival home or connection, I'm now building like a local team again. And so I was really excited to reconnect with you both because it's been a while, but maybe talk about that a little bit. How is it now that you are transitioning into more of a kind of feature realm with having those teams or having those connections? Like, are you finding that you're building it organically just from like people you've worked with, like in person? Is there any spillover from any of the festivals you're going to, or are you hiring just like, sometimes you just have to like, well, we need a guide. They're available. Now we know a new person. We didn't even know them before. So where are you at now with like the team of all of this?
I think I mentioned that the first festival that we took our first short film, That's Opportunity Knocking, to was a film festival that Fernando Mico was doing. And at that festival, Fernando said, I've got to introduce you guys to Del Weston, which Del Weston, bless his soul, was the curator of the AOF Film Festival, which is Action on Film, which is where we met. But for those of you where we met Shane, just to clarify, Del, once we were able to go to the AOF Film Festival, because Fernando did introduce us to Del Weston, and we were able to go there and see that Del Weston, just like Fernando, was a coach. He was a person that really wanted filmmakers to succeed. There's some people that are filmmakers and they want just to make their own films. Then there's some people that are filmmakers, like the two of them, that just want to help other people. And then, so that led to another film festival. And then you're at that AOF and you find out, well, here we are with you. Perfect example. Through Fernando, we met Del Weston, then went to AOF, saw you, met you at AOF. Now you're telling us about the Nevada Women's Film Festival. And we have a lot of friends in Vegas. So we'll go to the Nevada Women's Film Festival and we'll meet somebody else. It's always that way. And in fact, through this same group of people, we, by also submitting, while we had some downtime, we sometimes we'll just, like a year where we don't have a film, sometimes we'll just throw in a script. I sent a script off to AOF one year, because we didn't have a film, and it won Best Comedy at that film festival. Stephen has a little story. I'll set him up for this. That is exactly what you're talking about, building the team. I'll let you tell that, Stephen.
Well, through NovaFest, and Fernando, I submitted my screenplay that I'd written called My Missing Year, which is based on a year of my life where my mom got separated from my stepdad, and I ended up going into an orphanage for for a year. So I missed a chunk of being in my nucleus family for a year, and I had to adapt into that world. Well, I submitted that to Nova Fest, and it won. And one of the people who was in that circle, named Kylie Hitchcock, she found the script and she optioned it. And she asked me if in her option could she make a proof of concept, which is a shortened version just to pitch to producers, which is another tool that I suggest all filmmakers do, because people would rather see something than read something. But anyway, that's a tangent. She made the proof of concept and she submitted it to Nova Fest, and it just now won 2 awards. It won Best Drama Short and won Best Supporting Actor for Isaiah Williams. And Kylie and I went, and Chuck, we went there to go to the awards. We didn't know if we were going to win, but we were nominated for 8. So we were like, well, chances are we'll walk away with something. And so through submitting through film festivals, we have now connected with someone up in Canada, and she is interested in making the feature of My Missing Year. So it's the whole thing about film festivals is about, they say it's about networking, but a lot of people think that that is just, another term for just, being on people's heels and busting in. It's actually getting to know people and people who are interested in your story, because every story has a different set of people who are going to work on that story. And so Chuck and I are working on increasing our networking, and a lot of that comes through film festivals, because you never know who's going to move the next domino for you. You never know who, like with meeting Kylie, she has a whole network of people up in Calgary that, she goes, I got access to locations. I can do this. And so Chuck and I are, we're like, wow, okay, that's kind of cool that we know her now. So it's just a matter of meeting more and more people as you go through these festivals. And in fact, one of the people that we met at the first film festival, Palm Springs International Film Festival, turned out to be integral into making our first short, which is That's Opportunity Knocking. So they all go together, and you pick and choose the people who you need to work with on a specific project, and you never know until, as a writer, I'll have someone in mind, or I'll say, oh, this part would be great for someone, but you never know until the thing is done, until you're shooting on that day, of who's going to be in that circle with you. It's an ever-changing field.
And I'll add to that, just because, so it doesn't all seem it's all about film festivals. That first film was cast with people that we knew from theater. Stephen had done a play with Charlotte Gleason that she had directed and been in a play with him. We ended up doing a different play at the Fringe Festival in Hollywood. Another great thing. You get in these little fringe festivals in theater. It's a great way to meet people. That's how we ended up getting the idea and casting that first movie. It was all people that we had been in that production with at the Fringe Festival. The editor of that was somebody that we had met through the other project that Stephen was just talking about. So I worked at we live in Hollywood, and Stephen has worked at Warner Brothers, and I've worked at Spelling and Paramount and blah, 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 Deluxe Film Labs. So you always will just find people that are of a like mind to you in all sorts of different situations, and you'll always remember the people that are really people that you feel like you could just sit around for hours with and talk film, and that's who ends up being on your team. In answer to your question.
Well, it's funny to piggyback on what you're just saying about sitting around, because as you know, and I'm sure it's because I don't have any theater background at all, but I'm sure it's the same. It's all you're sprinting or you're standing. And so you do quite often have several hours to sit around and talk to somebody while you're just waiting for something to happen. Then you better be like, we really like sitting here for 3 hours together, because it's going to happen for 25 days straight or what have you. But that just reminds me, if we zoom out and just look at the macro, like theater or film, like what is it? It's a collaborative medium. You can't do whatever you're making unless you have 10 or 20 or 50 or 150 people. Like you need to have people. And so finding those people and finding the people you like, finding the people you want to work with over and over and over again, it requires you to get those connections. But a couple things you were talking about reminded me to shift us into the title of the show, which is the film notes, and get some notes from you. And so I like to kind of frame this as it could be, advice, maybe things you wish you'd known earlier, sometimes a hard-won lesson, or just something you found, like Stephen just talking about getting proof of concept is really important. So what might be a couple tips or notes that you might have in either from the projects you've done or the different roles you've been in?
My advice would be surround yourself with people who believe in you and your work. Try to avoid people who are in competition with you. And that is a challenge sometimes, because if the more you succeed at something, I find the more, if people haven't done something, they will be extremely jealous of you. And that might sound ugly, but I think it just brings up the fear that they can actually do something, and they haven't done it, and they become very competitive. But there's also a competitiveness that goes in the industry too, where people can be, it's you against me. And that can be dangerous too. And I would also say, hone your craft. Hone your craft. Learn writing. Learn directing. Don't be a hot shot. Be humble in what you do, and learn it, and be the best that you can be, instead of what you think other people think you should be. Be the best you at what you do, and hone what your vision of yourself is, and your vision of your film and your projects.
I agree with all that. I would say we should all embrace that it's 2025, and by that I mean when I first met Stephen and we were first stuck in theater because film was unavailable. Go back to the late 90s. It was kind of you were looked down on for producing your own work. And now, in a complete reversal, you are not even taken seriously if you don't do your own work. It could not have changed more. I remember in the late 90s, coming out here to Los Angeles, and just 2000s, yeah, she that actress, yeah, she's just all about self-promotion. She's always trying to do her own stuff. And literally, this is a kind of conversation you just wouldn't have anymore. The word influencer did not exist. Now it's all about, for better or for worse, and let's just say it's for better, it's all about people creating their own content. And when I was growing up, that wasn't a thing, but now that's a thing. Why not? Why should the 7 major studios control what we watch? They don't anymore. Most people spend more time watching YouTube than they spend watching the main channels and the main theater releases from the main studios. Well, back then it wasn't the case. Back then they controlled what we watched. Why shouldn't we have a more egalitarian system like this, where everybody gets to put whatever they want to on the airwaves and let the people decide what to watch? I would think Thomas Jefferson would be really happy that this revolution has happened in the arts, in filmmaking, in video making. I would think that the founding fathers would be all about this. This was everything that the Enlightenment was about. And so I would say embrace that, and be happy that that's what we get to do now. And not only is nobody criticizing that, but everyone is lauding it. Good for you. You got out there. You got your stuff out there. I think that's good for people's souls. I think it's good that people get to create. I think it's good for people's souls to create. And it shouldn't be just the elite 7 studios that get to do that. It should be all of us.
Well, well said, both of you. And one of the things that, especially in indie film, is you are wearing a lot of hats, for better or worse. So I think that not only, especially when you're starting, you learn how to do those sometimes out of necessity, but it can really help you later when you're like, oh, I don't have to do all this, but I'm working with people to do different things, and I understand what their job is because I've done that. So I understand how to talk to an editor and the DP and the producer and the whatever, because I've been in those shoes. You know, I can speak that language with them. You know, we have the shorthand or what have you. And that only comes from sometimes being in those trenches, you know, coming up in the theater or coming up, you know, starting as the PA or whatever. It's like, oh, I remember what it was like, you know, because I was down there and I've been able to walk up these steps. But I think that was a very well said position about, you know, opening these things up. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm old. I'm like, oh, I grew up. We had 3 channels. You know, we had ABC, NBC, and CBS, and that was it. And now, like you mentioned, like I mean, I don't even know what's on any of those channels anymore. We just have streaming services. So it has very much changed. But I think one of the things that's kind of like, whether you want to call it punk rock or indie or any of that stuff, is I think people like us are excited about change and want to see more change happen. Whereas I think, especially back then, people were kind of afraid to have the things change, you know? And so I definitely celebrate what you just mentioned. Now, before we run out of time, though, I do want to make sure that people can connect with you, see your work, and also perhaps whether they want to hire you or maybe reach out to you. So where might be some places that you could send people, whether it's websites or socials or anywhere else, and they can perhaps buy your book or anything else that you do. So please shine a light on any and all of that stuff for yourselves.
They can watch That's Opportunity Knocking on Amazon. We're still looking for a distributor for Driverless. They can look us up at driverlessthemovie.com. There's an About Us page on there. They can look there, and they can watch the trailers and see our log lines and everything else that we do. And they can contact us through there. And for my workbook, they can go to awakeningtheactorwithin.com/blog. And that's the best way for people to find out about my acting book. And, you know, they can always look up, see Stephen Foster on social media. I'm active all over social media, and then contact me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, X, whatever. And I'm on all of it.
He's on X. He's not on XXX.
I'm on ecstasy. They can also look us up on YouTube as well.
Back in the 90s, if you say you're on X, that meant something very different. So when I just wanted to say that most of all of that is on our YouTube channel, which is, you can find it easily. Stephen's name, C. Stephen Foster, on YouTube, and both trailers for both the movies and lots of other stuff is on there. Some of my songs, some of his acting workbook, teachings, everything is on there. So our lives, the porthole to our lives is through YouTube.
And to circle back to the beginning, one of the reasons why I always encourage people to watch the show is when you talk about that stuff. Like, if you're just listening to this as a podcast, go to the YouTube channel and watch, because you'll see the screenshot of the YouTube channel. You'll be able to see the link on the screen. You'll see the cover of the book or the poster for the movie. And I mean, I listen to lots of podcasts, and it's convenient to listen while you're doing other stuff or driving or whatever. But one of the reasons, we're talking about making stuff that people watch. So I always encourage people, go to my YouTube channel and watch the show. You get to see the person that's talking. You get to see, the pop-ups of the things that they're talking about. Just wanted to thank you again for both joining me today. It was great to learn a bit more about not only both of you separately, but also together as people, performers, creators, and to hear a little bit more about what you've been working on and where you're hopefully going. I always get excited when people tell me they're developing features. So it's so great to have you here, and thank you for sharing everything.
Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
It's great. Adore you for asking us on, and appreciate the time to come together with another filmmaker and talk shop.
And as I mentioned to everyone a few minutes ago, please check the show out on YouTube. This is season 4. So there's a lot of seasons and episodes. You can go back in kind of the archive and see other guests that I've talked to and learn more about different aspects of filmmaking, different jobs, different roles. Of course, it's also available as an audio podcast wherever you get podcasts. So please like, review, all the things, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support the show, please click on the link below. You can also contact me at my website if you have any questions about filmmaking or anything else. Off to the side, you'll see a couple of my books, Film Notes and the Film Notes Workbook. I encourage you to check those out if you'd like to learn more about filmmaking. See you in the next episode.
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.